They will not dismiss the 34 felony counts and the $486 million civil fraud judgment against Trump simply because he's returning to the White House. Both offices saying, quote, president-elect immunity does not exist. Instead, Alvin Bragg's office suggested an abatement, which basically means delaying the sentencing until Trump will be out of office. But in some other states outside of New York, an abatement can be used when a criminal defendant dies before being sentenced. Trump's lawyers predictably misconstruing the abatement request as a dark dream scenario, saying the DA is asking the judge to, quote, pretend as if one of the assassination attempts against President Trump had been successful. I don't even have words for that, Christy. Joining me now is Christy Greenberg, former deputy chief of the Southern District of New York's Criminal Division, a former federal prosecutor, and an MSNBC legal analyst. I mean, Christy, thank God for the state cases, right? Thank gosh, because you have the civil fraud case with Tish James. You have the Manhattan DA, Alvin Bragg's election interference case. Thank gosh for them that they actually came to fruition one way or another. I want to start with Alvin Bragg, though, because that one is the criminal case. He has delayed sentencing here. Your take on whether or not Judge Merchan is going to be swayed by the arguments that are being raised about dismissing the indictment wholesale?
I don't think he will. I hope he isn't. This idea that you could just dismiss the whole case
as if it never
vacate
happens.
The jury's verdict, like, that is not what is called for. You're supposed to, under the law, balance competing public interest here. Yes, there is a public interest in making sure that Donald Trump is not interfered with while he is president, that he can make decisions without interference. But there's also an interest in upholding the law and upholding the jury's verdict, and you have to weigh those. And if you just dismiss this case, that's absolute immunity. That means it just goes away. It's not clear to me at all that you could then bring it again. He's already gone to trial. There's double jeopardy. So it would mean absolute immunity, which the Supreme Court didn't even say you would get for unofficial conduct. And it would be permanent. So again, looking at what the Office of Legal Counsel has said for DOJ, they've said, look, he gets temporary immunity for the time that he's in office. He doesn't get permanent immunity forever once he leaves. So I don't see Judge Merchan taking that dramatic a step of dismissing it. There are other options he has where he can more, I think, in a better way, balance those interests.
Meaning Judge Merchan could say, I'm going to let the indictment stand, let the jury verdict stand, but I'm going to set his sentencing for Trump after he gets out of office, is what you're saying.
I think that's one of the options, and I think that's the most likely option. I mean, you've got Trump's lawyers saying, well, look, in the federal cases, the Office of Legal Counsel for DOJ said you can't even put it on hold. You can't even put it in abeyance. You cannot prosecute him full stop. But this is not DOJ's guidance is not binding on
law.
Judge Merchan.
That's important.
Exactly. It's guidance, and it's not even that's in a federal case. That is not for the New York State. It may be persuasive to the judge, but it is not binding. And so, again, in this circumstance, which is very different from the federal cases, which there had not been a trial yet, here we have a verdict. There had been a trial. I think the interests are just very different in this case, as Alvin Bragg points out.
So talk about Tish James, though, because she made a very persuasive argument in her response to the lawyers to Trump when she said, nah, we're not going to voluntarily dismiss this because this is a civil case. And the law is legion when it comes to say that you can pursue civil remedies and civil actions against sitting presidents. I mean, and she even cites, too, the Bill Clinton civil litigation that happened when he was in office.
Right. I mean, the law there is very clear. The Supreme Court has said if you're talking about civil litigation, that can go on even while he is sitting as president. Law is crystal clear there. She cites it. And she doesn't get into the whole back and forth with Trump's lawyer, where his letter is saying, well, but what about unity? We need unity for the country. And her response doesn't even address that because, I mean, come on, that's not really serious. And she just deals with the law, which is very clear. This case isn't going anywhere. It's fully briefed on appeal. Let's see what the appellate court does.
So very quickly, before I have to let you go, you know, part of what I get upset about is what I call the enablers. And people who follow my show understand how upset I am about the lawyers that enable Donald Trump's conduct. And I saw the people that signed that Alvin Bragg filing for Donald Trump, and that's Todd Blanche and Emil Bovee. The deputy, right, Attorney General of the United States nominee by Donald Trump is Todd Blanche. And then the Solicitor General role, I believe, is the one that they want to be able to give to Emil Bovee. And they are still putting in their filings the most outrageous comments. And they're clearly doing stuff that maybe flirts with a lack of violation of professional rules of conduct, but they're clearly just so egregious. And these are people, again, that Trump wants to have in controlling positions in offices that impact everybody and not just a select few Americans.
I could not agree more with what you're saying. I know both of them, worked with both of them at SDNY. And I think a lot of my colleagues have said, well, you know, they're real prosecutors, unlike Matt Gaetz, who was never a prosecutor. They're real prosecutors, so they know how to do their job. I think those people have not been paying attention to what they have been doing for the past year in these cases. You had Judge Chutkan in the D.C. case say, your briefs, there is a pattern in your filings of political rhetoric, and it is unbefitting of experienced defense counsel to put that kind of political rhetoric in exchange for legal arguments. Here they actually had legal arguments to make about why a dismissal may be appropriate. Yeah. But it's hard to get past all of this nonsense. I mean, when I saw the quote that you brought up earlier about the dark dream scenario of the DA, pretending that the assassination attempt was real, like, that is vile. That is a new low. And the idea, and I think you're right, it's irresponsible and it's unprofessional in an environment where we know that Alvin Bragg and his family have been subject to death threats. And so to put that kind of political rhetoric in this brief, I mean, it's so beyond the pale. So, no, I don't feel that these are people that have integrity, and we should think they've gone well beyond zealous advocacy here. They know what they're doing. There is an audience of Donald Trump, and that's who they're pandering to. And why should we think that that will change once they get into the Department of Justice, that all of a sudden they're going to be apolitical once they get there? I don't think there's any reason to believe that will be the case.
They're just going to be emboldened. And Mershon, for the record, told Todd Blanche, you're losing your credibility here. I think it's gone.
Yeah,
Christy Greenberg, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Coming up next, paving the way from cutting her teeth and local